Welcome to the MSP Xperience Game Changers, innovative thinkers in the MSP space. This is a limited edition series presented by Axcient, your trusted partner for comprehensive BCDR solutions for MSPs. I am your host, Robert Cioffi, the CTO and co-founder of Progressive Computing, a New York-based MSP established in 1993. So what is Game Changers? Game Changers, simply put, is a video series that we've designed to bring some of the most innovative thinkers in the MSP space into a one-on-one conversation with another MSP leader. Our topics are carefully vetted to push the envelope for MSPs, to discuss real-world problems that we're facing, and to hear from industry experts on how to overcome these issues in innovative and interesting ways. Today's episode is Why is Cyber Insurance So Important? And our special guest is Dustin Bolander of Clear Guidance Partners, but he's going to tell us a little bit more about himself. First of all, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, for sure.
You run a successful MSP, but also venturing into the cyber insurance space. So in a minute or less, I know that's not a lot of time, but can you tell us briefly about that new venture?
Sure. So I'm sure we'll go into more of the background, the what and the why, but I've been MSP industry since 2008. I'm actually own my second MSP now. And 2021 just started going all in on cyber insurance. I'm one of those people that, whenever I see the headaches, I just run straight at it and how can we take advantage, which is how I ended up owning an MSP that services almost exclusively law firms and now also own an insurance business as well.
Very cool. So, speaking about the MSP and the cyber insurance, that's obviously the topic today. I would imagine that most MSPs would tend to feel that insurance isn't necessarily a cool topic to be talking about, but it is important. Like, I certainly didn't get into this business or go to school so I could talk to my customers about cyber liability insurance. Well, can you tell us, why you think that, insurance is seen as this uncool, unsexy thing?
Yeah, the industry with regards to cyber, and this will get better like over the next 5 or 10 years, but it's really broken. If you go and look at let's take a traditional, I'm going to talk about lawyers a lot. Sorry, we're talking lawyers and
No,
insurance.
it's good. I think it's a great example. Yeah.
So let's look at two specific instances with insurance. Property insurance, like for say you're an MSP, you own your building, right? Property stuff hasn't changed that much, right? Fire has been more or less the same for the last 100 years. Floods have been more or less the same for the last 100 years. There's little nuances, things change and stuff, but it's not like cyber where all of a sudden tomorrow there's going to be a completely new, different type of fire that we have to deal with that we've never seen before, that nobody had thought of.
Yeah.
And then in 6 months, there's yet another kind of new fire, right? So for insurance, same thing with lawyers. Like the practice of law has been kind of the same for the last 100 years. Cyber moves so fast that, every 6 months on the MSP side, cybersecurity side, we're having to deal with something new and different. So cool, we got really good at backups because of ransomware, right? Well, screw those hackers. We're just going to restore. So now they're doing extortion and that kind of thing. It just keeps changing. So all that to say is insurance isn't used to that fast. This is like the first time ever that there has been that rate of change in any substantial amount of any substantial part of the insurance industry.
Right.
So they're really struggling. You're getting these agents that have been doing property for 40 years. Great. I just built my career off of doing property insurance last 40 years. It hasn't changed that much. I'm really good at it. I can talk construction materials and this, that, and the other. And now this new cyber thing that changes constantly. So that turned them on their head. And then the other part of it is the insurance industry is really backwards looking. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but we have all this data. So we know there's a really cool, if you want a cool insurance story, right? If you want some cool insurance history, go look up Hartford steam boiler. So this actually comes up in conversation a lot because I'll have people in the MSP industry tell me dude, insurance has never set, and changed the standards of what they're insuring. Totally not true. If you go back, I think it was the early 1900s, the steam boilers, right? For heating, for steam power and all that stuff. HSB completely, they said, we won't insure you unless you have these safety things built in. They completely transformed that industry because of insurance. So from that standpoint, it's I'm going to say it's a necessary evil from the MSP perspective. But
Right.
I think a good thing that has come out of it, if you're a security first mature MSP, you probably haven't seen a big change in the security side of it. You've seen a lot more paperwork, you've seen a lot more stupid vulnerability scans, things like that.
Right.
But you haven't changed the way that you're doing things that much. Well, that's like the most mature, let's call it the 20% of the MSP industry. The guys that are sitting there fighting with clients to even get them to turn on MFA,
Mm.
insurance has been a boon for them because you can scream your head off till you're blue in the face. Robert, I need you to turn on MFA.
Right.
And Robert, the CFO, is sitting there going, I don't want to, that's
Yeah.
annoying.
It's too
The minute,
inconvenient.
yeah. But the minute you say insurance wants you to turn that on, they're, Dustin, why the hell didn't you guys have this turned on? Like, we need this. Come on, please get it
Yeah.
done. So for that bottom half of customers that just fight you on security that won't do it, insurance has raised. And keep in mind, like we were in the gutter on security for that side of the industry, right? But insurance has kind of raised that bar up to not where it needs to be, but substantially better level.
Yeah. I just imagine, when you were doing that explanation, like, especially about how fast things change and how insurance companies are not accustomed to that rate of change, that some actuary or, some statisticians that are sitting in some, windowless basement figuring out like, insurance rates and whatnot, they must be pulling their hair out about how quickly, the ball moves in our space. And how do they measure risk and then assign, a dollar amount to that? It must be really difficult for insurance companies to deal with our industry.
Oh yeah, it's my running joke has been whenever I go to these insurance conferences, I'm the smartest one in the room, and I don't mean that as bragging, right?
Right.
I'm not the smartest one in the room usually. It's just the level of cybersecurity knowledge is so bad in the industry. Right now, is insurance is saying 2024 is the year of MDR. I got a question. I'm going to turn the tables and interview you for a second. But what year did Progressive start adding MDR as a security option?
Probably in 2021.
Yeah, there you go. We started rolling out to some of our customers in 2019. So insurance, let's say, 3 years behind the curve, right, on this kind of stuff.
Right.
I think MDR is great, but it's one of those of like, this shouldn't be news to you. This shouldn't be as much just, grief as we as MSPs get from the insurance industry. It's like, guys, we've been doing this for years on the MSP side. Blackpoint was founded like 2015. Huntress was founded like 2016.
Right.
Like this MDR should not be this big news headline.
Almost 10 years old now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So, I find that some MSPs just simply, they kind of got the ostrich syndrome. They put their head in the sand. They don't feel comfortable talking about insurance. Um, they keep it at arm's length. They'll only engage if they're asked by their client. Are they setting up themselves for danger by ignoring the conversation? And then maybe even one step further, is there opportunity for them? And then as a bonus question in there, I'm sorry, there's a lot of questions in there, but can I make a commission?
So I can start off with the can I make a commission? Not without a license. As part of my slow descent into madness and insurance, I actually got my license.
Uh-huh.
That's a whole other story. We could talk about that forever. But no, so people will illegally pay commissions. That comes up on the insurance industry. The story is always that the agents, there's sketchy agents out there will do those kind of kickbacks on it.
Right.
And it's totally fine until what happens is somebody else finds out, gets pissed off, and reports you to the State Department of Insurance,
Right.
in which case stuff comes up. So no, legally, there's not a way to get paid from the policies.
So I imagine that's not even part of the equation, just as a
Yeah.
general rule.
Yep. Anything insurancy, you can't get paid without a license,
Okay.
right?
So then what's the
Um,
benefit for me as an MSP to talk to my customers?
Yeah. Get them to do the security that they should be. And then the other thing is like, I don't think this is a dirty word, even though a lot of people do, but the upsell opportunity, right? It's MSPs are their businesses. They're there to make money.
Right.
I've been trying to get you to buy this, BCDR solution, right? Faster recovery time, that kind of stuff. Now with insurance is going back to, we've been talking to our customer. They won't do it. They won't do it. Insurance now wants to know how fast can you recover your environment in the event of a ransomware attack? Is
Mm.
it under 24 hours? Is it under 72 hours? Is it 2 weeks kind of thing?
Right.
So you can go back and you can say, look, insurance is wanting to know, hey, with this cool Axcient solution, we can do 24 hours, right?
Right. Or
So
less.
that sort of thing. Yep. And going through those questions and using those to multi-factor is the, I could be correct on this. Like, I don't think multi-factor is ever really a profit center for an MSP these days. Like, it's just such a, half of us are using Duo. Maybe we're making a couple cents on it.
Yeah.
Another half are using 365. So I don't look at that as an upsell, but it's such an important protection. We can use insurance as sort of the stick and say, you know what, you got to turn this on, right? We've even had at Clear Guidance, we have our help desk. If somebody asks to turn off multi-factor, the immediate response from our dispatch is, sorry, we can't do that because of insurance. And that closes like 99% of the tickets.
And then the 1% comes to you for explanation, I'm sure.
Oh, the 1% ended up being, we have it written into our contracts that our customers have to have insurance. I have no sense of ego on this, so I don't mind admitting it. The 1% that I left out there was one of the customers came back and said, we don't have insurance, turn it off. I was like, ooh,
really?
There's a process.
Even worse, right? Like,
but hey, at least we found out.
Yeah, well, at least you found out is exactly right. So speak to us a little bit about the difficulty for a typical SMB client to qualify for cyber insurance, and specifically, what are some of the things that make it either hard or easy to obtain, and are there any non-negotiables?
Yeah. Non-negotiables, unfortunately, they're still pretty minimal. One of the rules on insurance is we don't ever name carriers, which I absolutely hate, but it's the industry. We got to follow the rules. So I will say a very, 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 very large carrier gave a presentation at a conference I was at a couple of months ago.
Okay.
And they said they do not anticipate adding any mandatory controls over the next year besides MFA and backups, which for me was just like, I can't believe that. You can go out though. Most carriers right now, you can still get a policy for an SMB, right? Once you start getting above 15 million or so, it gets a little bit more complicated. But under that, that's kind of the table stakes for. It'll be a bad policy. It'll be a bad rate, but just getting that, let's call it foot in the door. Unfortunately, that's still the case. Where you want to start getting a really good policy. So let's go down the rabbit hole a little bit on, I say good and bad policy, right? Yeah. So I got $1 million policy. Like, okay. All right, cool. It's not all $1 million policies are equal, which is insane. This was one of the big learning things for me of just like the level of detail that goes into it. So you'll have sublimits on things. The easiest one to talk about is crime coverage. So something like oops, we got a hacker convinced us to wire, money to somebody, things like that. So policies you'll see have that crime coverage. Your $1 million policy only covers either 100,000, 150,000, or 250,000 on the high end.
Right.
So going back to controls is, do you want to have something, a better policy? Now suddenly we got to have security awareness training and a wire transfer policy, right? If over a certain amount, we're going to have a multi-factor verification of it. Only certain employees can do it, things like that. Okay, now that lets us go from $100,000 in crime coverage to $250,000 in crime coverage.
I see. So having certain programs or better IT security hygiene in place can maybe increase your sublimits. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yep.
Right.
Business interruption is another.
Coverage.
Right, exactly. Yeah, better coverage.
Right.
Business interruption. So, excuse me, your business is down for, a week from a ransomware attack.
Right.
Great. Insurance is going to come in and make you whole, just a base policy. It's going to bring in the forensics people, the incident response, right? All the stuff you'd expect, legal, blah, blah, blah. What it's not going to do is, well, this company normally would have made $5,000 profit in a week, right? That money's not coming back. Like, we got you back up and running, insurance is done. So you can get business interruption as well. And that will come in at the end of it and say, you know what, Robert, you guys would have made $5,000 profit. Here's a check. But to get that on the insurance side is they want to see how fast can you recover. So suddenly backups become important.
Right.
And maybe just to get a policy every 6 months is fine for backups. If you want to have that good business interruption coverage up to $1 million, you better be having backups you can restore within 48 hours.
So Dustin, this kind of brings up a little bit of fear that I have, and I know that a lot of MSPs have shared the same sort of concern, is that, suddenly I'm now looking at my client's policy, and I've even had a few of them that just send me their policy to say, "You read it, you tell me what you think." And I suddenly feel like, "Hey, I'm not an insurance expert." Like, suddenly I'm having conversations with them about policy elements, and I feel like, maybe I'm not the subject matter expert here. What do I do to mitigate some of that?
Yeah, so the two rules we talked earlier about, are you licensed or not? Two really easy rules. There's some more nuances, but if you just want to be completely safe as an MSP, don't talk numbers and don't talk specific carriers or their policies.
Okay.
So let me give you a couple examples, right? I'm going back to law firm, sorry. So law firm comes to you and goes, all right, hey, Robert, we're going to get a $2 million policy. Do you think that's enough? Well, I don't know. I'm not the guy. But what you could do is on the other side of it is be like, what do you guys bill per hour? Right? Average ransomware attack is whatever, 14 days of downtime.
Right.
Do the math, and that's going to send them some statistics and kind of lead them the water on it. But you don't want to say, oh, $2 million policy, you should get a 3 million, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Don't talk that policy. The other side is around the specific carrier. So you also don't want to say like, oh, Tokyo Marine is great. Beltex is great. Don't buy a cowbell.
Yeah.
Don't talk. There was a webinar last year of two guys at a vendor got on and like pulled up a traveler's policy, and we're sitting there reading through it. This was an MSP vendor. And it was like, that was textbook, guys, no, never
Don't do that.
You
Right.
just put it on the internet. Like, you're lucky you didn't get in trouble. So don't talk those specific carriers. You can say, a good comprehensive policy should have, higher crime limits, speaking in generalities, but don't talk specific carriers. And whenever I say that, that extends to your customer's policy, right? And then don't talk the numbers on the policy as well. If you follow those two rules, you're pretty safe.
Okay, that's great advice, and I really hope that a lot of MSPs, are listening to that, because I always am a little concerned about, especially from an errors and omissions. Am I saying the wrong thing to them? I'm providing them the wrong advice, and this might kind of be a lead in to the next question I have. It's a little bit of a setup, but I think the audience appreciates these types of things. Some of my clients have an insurance broker that provide a wide variety of policy and coverages, but there seems to be a few companies, and there's a bunch of them that we see it at shows recently, that focus only on cyber. Can you speak to the generalist versus specialist approach and the pros and cons there?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier around the insurance industry has a problem around these agents just knowing, understanding.
Right.
Little bit self-serving, but I mentioned earlier, I got a license. I personally think the best people in cyber have come from, the cybersecurity side and then moved into the insurance side, just because of the nature of the beast. But the interesting piece on cyber, again, let's go back to our typical law firm. I worked with one recently. They had a 6-figure lawyer's professional liability policy.
Okay.
Typical insurance agent, you're going to get somewhere from like 10 to 20% commission on a policy, right? So let's use, I'm not a smart man, let's use simple round numbers, right? I got a $100,000 policy, so I'm going to probably get $15,000 commission off of that. Now they come in with their cyber policy also. I'm going to get a $10,000 cyber policy, so I'm going to get $1,500. So if I'm the agent, I got two checks I'm getting off of this client, $15,000, $1,500. Where do you think I'm going to put all my effort in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been an interesting thing. What we're finding in a lot of cases is these agents don't care. They're kind of general coverage agent, doesn't care that much about losing cyber. They're not fighting for it because they're not putting in the effort in the first place. They're sending hey, Robert, it's renewal time. Confirm you filled out this form. Here you go. They're not shopping around. They're not advising, anything like that. So just like on a bigger company, say that it's a trucking company, right? They're going to bring in a trucking specialist because that guy knows how to insure a fleet of 100 trucks, that sort of thing. Right. On the smaller side, the cyber insurance is just so unique that you're seeing a lot of cyber specialists. And this isn't, again, me, the Fifth Wall, Beltex, any of the businesses I'm involved with. There's folks up in Canada. There's a company in Australia called InfoSure that's doing the same thing. He does, it's Andrew. He partners exclusively with MSPs and exclusively does cyber. Like this is, this is worldwide kind of deal, because again, it's such a unique intersection of cybersecurity and insurance that it takes a certain type of
Well,
specialist.
it seems necessary because, at least some of the brokers that I've spoken with, they don't seem to, they just, throw an application out at you and they don't provide any kind of guidance, or it's
Yep.
difficult, for the few times that I've gone back to them to ask questions, they just don't know.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. You got to have at least, maybe you don't have to be a cybersecurity expert, right? But you do need to at least have a good baseline understanding. You should have the, kind of like a lot of people are like, how do I get into cyber? Go work tier one help desk for a year to get that level of experience.
Yeah.
Like at least that level of being able to follow the conversation. Maybe you can't go in and implement, maybe you can't do that, but you could go to, like you and I were at Write a Boom recently. Could you go to Write a Boom and sit through the sessions and mostly follow along, right? I think a lot of agents, if they went there, it would just be like attending a Greek conference or an Italian conference, right?
Yeah.
You just
Unless
would
they
have
speak
no
Greek.
idea what they're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
So
It's all Greek to me, unless you're Greek, right? Then it's easy. Haha. Anyway, so one thing that I've seen as a phenomenon, and I don't know if this is just me complaining or maybe just trying to offer some advice to the listeners, is around renewal time. I feel like some of my customers come to me with like, "Hey, this renewal came in,
do
and we've
tomorrow.
got like 2 days." Like what? Like 2 days? So now we've told our clients we need a minimum of 7 to 10 business days for renewals. And now we're even starting to track their renewal dates so that we're prompting their insurance broker to provide a renewal application ahead of time. I mean, is this a tactic, or is this just the insurance agency
They're
business?
lazy.
It's just the way they work. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the way they work, which is incredible to me because in a lot of cases it's like the office space guy. I carry the orders to the engineers. It's like, dude, all you're putting in minimal effort. You're going from the carrier, taking the application and handing it to the customer. Like
Yep.
that's it. Give us some more time. You knew this was coming literally for the last 12 months. Put it on your calendar. So no, that's a unfortunate part of the industry. That's just the way it is at most agencies. The customer service is not great. And you
Mm,
mentioned earlier the specialists. So that LPL, the lawyer's professional liability, they may be hustling on that, and then cyber is such an afterthought. So this is another argument for the specialist.
yeah.
But you as the MSP is, I always tell people, track the renewal date. I don't care about the carrier you're using, the agent, or anything,
I just want
but
to make sure they have
integrate
a
that into
policy.
your QBRs,
Yeah.
because now what you can do is there's tons of information available online from, you said earlier, there's all sorts of people with the booths at our conferences that we're seeing. There's a lot of stuff online of like, here's the trends of what insurance is looking for. Throughout the year on the QBR, you can say, hey, Robert, we're coming up on June 1st is your renewal. We're doing a QBR right now. Like there's these two things. You guys should get this in place for your insurance renewal. And by the way, we're 60 days out. Can you bug your agent for me and get that form? So baking it into your processes, that's, I think we're going to go a little bit into, MSP history here today. But that was one of the big advantages for us early on was we started doing that in 2020. And that was just such a foreign concept that I could go in and just sell on that. Like,
Mm.
hey, we understand how insurance works. And MSP prospects will be like, ooh, like, yeah, that's a huge pain in the butt right now, because of exactly what you just talked about.
Yeah, it's been a pain point for us, and it's the only way we can mitigate it is just tracking those renewal dates, and we just put it
Yep.
in a system like with a warrant, like we track a warranty expiration, right?
Yeah.
So we know that thing is popping up, and we can act on it.
We're
Um,
Connect by Shop. My team started doing configs for it,
yep,
and yep.
that's what we're doing as well. So we don't have a tremendous amount of time left. I got maybe 2 questions to squeeze in here. I hear that premiums are shooting up while coverage is shrinking. Can you give us your insights on what's happening or what kind of trends that we should be aware of?
Yeah, so it got better. Will Brooks at Fifth Ball and I started calling it the world's worst roller coaster because we saw 21, 22, like it's going up, 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 right? So you would expect there's that big, and then nope, it's just flat. And we've been kind of, so I think they're saying this year was going to be like 5 to 15%, which is,
Mm,
more in line with automotive and all that stuff. But like you said, they're starting to cut some of the coverages. That crime coverage is one that's a big pain point for a lot of people. You're starting to see exclusions, things like that. I do think we'll start seeing things swing back the other way a little bit. Most policies, your rate is going to be primarily set by three things: the state that you're in, And this is perfect because you and I knew Texas and New York, right? Polar opposites.
Yeah.
So down here, you have a medical office gets breached, right? There's a fine. We actually do have fines for some things in Texas, but it's like $250 per patient record. Do you know what it is in New York?
I probably put a zero on the end of that. I
Yeah, I
don't
was
know.
gonna say, I want to say it's a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
So, insurance is looking at it from that standpoint. That's a lot more, and they're going to pay that as part of a claim, by the way, right?
Yikes.
So rates go, it's like I've seen, I think, a 20% swing between Texas and New York, for example.
Hmm.
Company revenue, and then what industry you're in, right? If you're a medical office, obviously it's going to be higher because of that kind of risk, that sort of thing. So that sets your base rate. Those security controls are only moving at like 5, 10, sometimes 15%. It's actually a very small swing. You have those eligibility controls that are like a foot in the door. We talked about that earlier, right? You got to have MFA, you got to have security awareness training and backups. Past that, answering yes on that stuff would only move your rate, a couple percent points each. So I think we're going to see bigger swings going forward on that as the industry gets more mature. Suddenly realizing that like 24/7 EDR, like that's a pretty substantial MDR rather, right? Like ransomware. If you go and look on Huntress's webpage, we're actually on there, Clear Guidance Partners, because we battle tested the EDR product, but it stopped a full-on ransomware attack. Talking about backups, we mentioned that earlier, right? There's a substantial difference of do you have backups versus like a full BCDR. Like that's awesome because now suddenly we can just spin right back up, right? We're down for a couple hours rather than a couple weeks.
Yep.
So insurance is starting to figure that out. And you're going to see, today, let's use those examples, right? A company with 24/7 MDR and BCDR versus a company that has neither. Their rate, let's say like an average SMB is $4,000. One's at 4,200, the other one's at 3,800. But you and me are sitting there and it's like, man, that's a drastically different security stance. That's a drastically different resilience. These guys can recover from backups in a matter of hours. So the carriers are starting to recognize that that's a difference to where maybe this time next year, it's going to be $3,000 versus $5,000 instead.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how they start to catch up to what we know is, good resiliency and good protection versus what's not.
Right.
We only have like a couple minutes here or less.
I'd like to cover one more piece on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because this is what everybody's been scared to death of, but I want to kind of ring the bell of like, it's not that bad, guys. Behind the firewall telemetry, insurance wants to hook into your systems, Robert, and monitor what you're doing for security.
Yeah, I've been hearing about this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my thing has always been, for the love of God, please don't give us another agent to install.
Yeah.
There is one insurance policy out there right now that does ask to put an agent on everything. I think that's a terrible approach. But going through the API of the tools that you're already using, you can put 365 as an easy one, right? You go to do the application consent thing, it pops up. You're giving these permissions. You know what they're getting access to. You know that they can't push something bad into the environment.
Right.
But if you go back and look, remember Progressive, the save and drive thing, the plugin?
Yes.
Right?
The
So
thing you stick in your car, right? Yeah.
So I know what you drive. Like, is that one of the things? Would you ever use the plug-in drive thing to save on your insurance?
Not in my car.
Yeah, same here. I did at one point, and my rate was going up a little bit. So it'll be an optional. You'll have a ton of carriers that don't do that. But on the other side, if you drive like a grandma and you're sitting there, coming to a full stop, never gunning it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which, think of it from the MSP perspective. Most of us are doing a good job. Most of the people listening here, rather, are doing a great job.
Probably doing a great job. Yep.
Yeah, you're going to be well above average. Like if that translates to your customers, why would you not want to do that, right? Everybody's like, oh, we're trying to, they're trying to deny claims, that kind of thing. Well, they would try to deny it now. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Right now the forensics to look for the evidence and stuff, that's not going to swing the needle that much for the denial of claims and stuff. But what it can do is swing the needle substantially on the amount that your customer's being charged. So now I can go in and say, look, at Clear Guidance, our security is so good. If you go and use these carriers with this telemetry thing, we meet all the requirements. We look good. Using us to do your cybersecurity, your premium is going to go down 30%.
So it's a way to differentiate from the competition. Instead of ignoring this problem or just kind of like loosely managing it, by embracing cyber insurance and leaning into it this way, we can actually find ourselves very competitive. It sounds like what you're saying.
Yep. Yeah. And that's what, I'm always one of those guys of like, show me the proof. Why should I listen to you on that?
Right.
Going back around the controls. So I was really early to the game, 2020. We doubled our MRR in 2020, 2021 by leading with cyber insurance.
Cool.
A lot of people are doing that now, but I think this next phase of the industry with the behind the firewall, if you embrace that and say, we got great security, insurance recognizes that, and you obviously have to be correct about that, right? You can't
Of
lie about it.
course. Yeah, you
You'll
can't
find
just
out.
make this
But
up,
yeah,
right?
coming in and saying the behind the firewall telemetry ones, there's another opportunity there. Especially now that customers more and more are getting insurance, they're listening to insurance. That would be a good, and it's going to be an 18-month window probably. It's not going to be a couple years opportunity, but if you're a first mover on that as an MSP, sales wedge, you can go and talk to these guys and be like, look, we're so good, we can save you money on your insurance. Insurance is telling you we're good.
I want to squeeze one more question in there, but we got to keep it really short, maybe under a minute or about a minute. My MSP has a cyber liability insurance policy. Does that cover my clients, or do my clients have to have their own policy?
It will cover your services that you deliver, but will not cover your clients completely. So let's just talk hypothetical, right? Ransomware attack that happens. It's going to be depending on how it gets in. If they have a policy, that policy is going to come in, restore all that stuff. They may want to make a claim against your MSP. But if you don't, or if the client doesn't have insurance, rather, you go and use your tech E&O policy, they're going to look and be like, oh, was Robert actually negligent or not? And they may say like, no, you guys did what you're supposed to. It was co-managed and their IT person turned off MFA for somebody, right?
Right. Yep.
You want to have both sides of the house. My theory has always been, at the end of it, no matter how much you prep them, breaches are when, not if, right? They're going to be ticked off. They're going to be mad. Give them insurance to kind of target on that and get made whole, rather than coming after Progressive or Clear Guidance.
Right. I actually have some friends that got sued by clients because of problems, and there's, the client is still a friendly client. They just, they said, well, look, you know what, this happened. Our insurance is going after yours. We're, it's almost like having a fender bender. It's like, hey, no hard feelings. We still want to continue doing business, but we're just, it's just business here, and we'll let insurance fight it out. So
we've had 3 incidents that ended up being insurance claims on our client side, and all went smooth. Everybody's still friends, their client still. And that was, again, they were like, oh, thank goodness we had insurance to come in and kind of take care of that.
Good advice. So everybody really should have their own policy, is what I'm hearing. The bottom line is there.
Each party needs their own policy, coverage on all sides. Like you said, fender bender.
Yep. You want both sides covered. Well, geez, we could talk forever about this, and who knew cyber insurance, what some people might think is a boring conversation, all the wealth of opportunities that it brings to an MSP. But unfortunately, that brings us to the end of our discussion on why is cyber insurance so important. Dustin, thank you again for joining me today and helping to lift our industry by sharing your wisdom and experience. Dustin, really quick, how can people find or reach you?
LinkedIn's usually the easiest. Dustin Bolander. There's only 2 of us on there that I know of, and the other one is a amateur basketball player. So you're not going to mix us up.
Yeah, I don't think I'd mix you 2 guys up. Well, thanks to everyone for tuning into our series, Game Changers, Innovative Thinkers in the MSP Space, graciously sponsored and presented by Axcient. If you'd like to learn more about their BCDR products, which are totally awesome in my opinion, you can contact sales or sign up for a free trial just by visiting their website, www.axcient.com. Just let them know that Robert sent you. Until next time, live long and prosper.